Yeah, surf the beat cause the bass is bubbling. Gotta get it in before it comes tumbling down. There's only so much time to find this kind of rhyme to express my mind.
Sweet Christmas jive turkeys and welcome to the CageCast. I'm your host Charlie, the Professor Esser, and with me as always is my skinny rich friend
Mozz.
Hey Mozz, welcome back to the CageCast, Mozz. Okay, tonight our episode, Season 1, Episode 11, Now You're Mine. Directed by George Tillman Jr. Written by Christian Taylor. Created, of course, by Chio Hodari Coker. And in one bold move, a friend from his past puts Luke on the defensive, Misty in dire straits, and Harlem's safety in jeopardy. Bum bum bum. Okay. And this is a very interesting episode. Bottle episode takes place in one location, which is Harlem's Paradise, although in multiple locations in Harlem's Paradise.
Right.
Now, let's see here. We open up, of course, with people running out of Harlem's Paradise because from previous episode, Diamondback and his crew have opened fire fairly indiscriminately and are murderizing people. As you do.
Luke, they're shooting. Luke had showed up and he's brought Claire with him. They run into Misty and he's trying to save her at the end of the last episode, and that's where we cut in here.
Yeah. Of course, Misty has gotten shot in the arm.
Yeah.
Which all good comic book fans have been waiting for this whole time. Because Misty in the comics does not have that arm. It's a robot arm designed by Tony Stark. So, who knows? Maybe by the time we get to the Defenders, we might actually get a Tony Stark cameo in all this. But we're all awaiting. So essentially, there's chaos, there's murderizing, and Luke takes Misty into the kitchen. He moves a refrigerator to block people being able to get into the kitchen, and then takes her into the essentially the hidden cellar of the speakeasy, because as he points out, this was an old Lucky Luciano property, and so there's a lot of little prohibition hidey holes in it.
Right.
Yes.
And the other interesting thing that's developing is outside the police have showed up, and there's a bit of a power struggle on figuring out how to deal with the situation.
Well, yes, because it is a power struggle. We have our trigger-happy SWAT captain,
Right.
who has been kind of a force in this from the start. He's made this point about how, and for his perspective, this of course, leads into what we, it is amazing how for a political show, Luke Cage does try to not have just one perspective or just have everything be, here's what it is, here's how we say it is, and anyone who disagrees with us is wrong. Right. I think that when they do show your Blue Lives Matter people here, I think they make legitimate arguments. I think they make this real argument that, they're not people afraid of, Puerto Ricans and blacks. They are, but they are very much okay with using force against people that they see as a threat. Now, of course, the counter-argument is that it does seem that a lot of the people you see as a threat are Puerto Ricans and blacks, but,
Right.
We'll get back to that later. So Luke is hiding. He, of course, tourniquets Misty's arm, which, again, I remember in Boy Scouts they used to tell us, look, when you tourniquet someone, you're basically, you only tourniquet someone when they're going to lose that limb anyway.
Right.
And so it's because you are cutting off. Well, a tourniquet basically cuts off the flow of blood to the limb. And yes, it keeps you from bleeding out, but it also means you're likely going to lose the limb. But, and this is where we get makes this a great episode, I think, is we do get everyone who is separated now having to deal with their own dramas. And I think that's kind of neat. And I think what is really the best drama we get is through our councilman Damien, forget what they gave as his last name.
Damon Boone.
Damon Boone and Diamondback.
Diet Obama, as Diamondback called him, which I thought was hilarious.
Yeah, well, it is. That's and that's an interesting aspect in this entire presentation too. It's when you look at guys like Barack Obama or Cory Booker, there is often this very negative view of them in their local communities. I live in Newark, and Cory Booker, of course, ran unsuccessful against our illustrious mayor, Sharp James, prior to becoming mayor of Newark. And there was this very strong anti guy who doesn't want to get his hands dirty. And this idea of the guy who doesn't want to get his hands dirty is somehow suspect in the community expressly because they don't want to get their hands dirty. It's like, we're people that are living in a struggling situation. We get dirty, and we don't want you sitting there because you never had to get your hands dirty sitting in judgment of us. So, and I think that informs very much the Mariah dynamic with Damon Boone. Because, of course, Mariah is a person who grew up in the dirt, and has, in her mind, extricated herself from it. But by the same token, is also judged for her existence within it. And of course, Damon Boone is the man who never had to deal with it, and so losing her seat to him was particularly troublesome. Although, of course, that does not seem to be a problem anymore.
Right.
Yes. So, in our in these scenes, we do get Diamondback discussing with Damon Boone his motivations.
Right. And for some reason, he decides to just lay out his whole plan to him in typical bad guy way.
Well, I think there's a very good scene in this, which is essentially showing that Diamondback is crazy.
Right.
Which is when he talks about his Bible.
Right.
And he gives him his Bible, and he opens his Bible, and the Bible is, every line is highlighted, which is, it's one of these things where this is a guy who's reading this every day, going over it again and again and again, and every moment, he is falling deeper in his own insanity. And right. I think up until that point, I think even Damon Boone was thinking, okay, look, he's a gangster.
I can reason with him.
He has his motivations. He has his desires. I can work with this guy. And then he looks at this Bible and he goes, oh, okay. This goes so much deeper than anything I can deal with. This right. is not a person that I can talk out of being a lunatic.
Right. I'm not equipped to deal with this.
Exactly. And, but he has to deal with it regardless. Now, Misty is with the hostages, because we have three groups. We have the hostages, we have Luke and Misty in the basement, and then we have Diamondback and... Claire's with the hostages. Yeah, Claire's with the hostages, and Diamondback and Boone in the main office. Right. Now, of course, and again, we get this thing, again... with Shades, who is really speaking truth to power, and a Diamondback here, which is that, what really is your plan here? And it is Diamondback realizing that, or it is Shades realizing that Diamondback isn't operating with a plan. He doesn't care. This is not a financial decision anymore for him. This has gotten personal. And if there's one thing that I think speaks to Shades' motivation, is it's never personal for Shades.
Right.
There is no personal attachment. There is no, Shades is the guy who, if someone said to him, hey, why don't we just let Luke Cage have his side of the street? He would have said, that's a very good idea. Let's look into that.
Yeah.
Let's see if there's a reason why that won't work. And, if there's a reason, then we're going to, not do it. But I think, he is a guy who does not take it personal. He is a guy who is going to do what he has to do because he is a professional criminal, Everybody else has got these Shakespearean familial ties that drive them to madness, And
I think it's an interesting question here too about who really should be in charge versus who usually gets to be in charge. Obviously the best person that should be in charge is, in my opinion, Shades. Mm-hmm. But I guess if you're that smart that you could be in charge, you don't want the heat that comes with being the boss, Well,
yeah.
So it's smarter for you to install somebody that is easily manipulatable, but at the same time that allows them to be manipulated like he is by outside factors as well.
Yeah.
So it's constantly like a shuffling game about who gets to be in power.
Well, you also have in that just the fact that sometimes the guy who is best to be in power isn't always the person that people want to follow. Shades, he's cool, he's calm and collected. He doesn't, and for what it's worth, people get motivated by revenge.
Right.
If you say, well, if you stop for a minute and say, well, let's not seek revenge, people say, well, you must be weak. Why don't you want to go revenge? And now the truth is because if we go get revenge, it's just going to lead to an endless cycle of death and destruction. And no one will make any money.
Right.
People don't want to hear that. It's like, just to get political on it, that's why it's a big thing when you start antagonizing China. Not because we're not America and we're not big and tough and it's not that we're quote unquote afraid of China. It's that China's someone you should have respect for because they are an incredibly powerful nation. We're not going to go invade China and make it the 51st state.
Right.
There's no scenario in which that happens. None. We
can't have an Eastern USA?
No.
Like East USA?
No, that doesn't work that way because these, quite frankly, England couldn't do that,
Right.
Even England had a Boxer Rebellion, and now China has nuclear weapons.
Yeah, I don't think even Genghis Khan was able to do that.
No, it is. That's the thing. Everyone says, you're having this one world government. You know how hard it is to get the world to agree on anything? You can't get a prom committee to agree on what color the streamers should be. You want people to agree on which group should be genocided this week. Come on. It doesn't work that way, And what works is giving adequate respect to each group and letting cooler heads prevail. And when cooler heads prevail, things actually work well. And when someone gets all caught up in, my daddy didn't love me enough, so now I've got to go kill somebody, that ends poorly for the group. And that is essentially what we're seeing here in the Shades Diamondback dynamic.
Yeah.
And why I think... Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
Well, I was going to say why I think Mariah and Shades make such a great team, because I don't think Mariah really cares for where she comes from, but it's not important to her as a person. It's not important to her because, and for what it's worth, it's because she is a woman. No one is sitting there looking at her, judging her testicular fortitude, as it were. She's allowed to make the intelligent decision to say, you know what? Why don't we just figure out a way that we can both find a way to make money? Because we both want to make money, and it helps for her that she doesn't really give much of a care for the fact that her cousin is dead, who she killed anyway. You know, it's like she really has no dog in any of these fights. She doesn't like Luke Cage because Luke Cage is causing problems for her. And also she doesn't like Luke Cage because, hey, he's a superpowered person and that's now a thing we can rally people against.
Right.
But in general, if Luke Cage says, hey, look, I kind of just want to go back to sweeping up hair, I think Mariah Dillard would be saying, fine by me. You know?
Yeah. 4 blocks radius around that barbershop, no one goes near there, and we don't have a problem.
Exactly, you know? And I think Shades, too. I think everyone would be happy to have Sweden back. Or Switzerland back. I want to call it.
Yes,
I'm sorry,
indeed.
I'm an American. I don't know what countries in Sweden and Switzerland are called the same thing. You know, everyone would like to have Switzerland back. And Switzerland, and of course, that's this whole thing, is that if cooler heads had prevailed, because at the start of this whole thing, Cornell was a very cool head, which is why he was in charge. It was like, I'm a cool head. I'm making these deals. They're very intelligent deals. And then he's making these choices when he gets tight to let someone else make a decision that ends poorly.
Yeah, or someone tries to take too much of an initiative.
Yeah. Well, but to that extent, you know, the whole thing is Cornell did not from the start have enough. He wasn't being a hands-on enough director. He wasn't standing up and saying, "Okay, here's what I need you to do.
Right.
Here is the length. Here is the breadth of your leeway, and don't forget you're walking into freaking Switzerland."
Right.
You know, and that's the whole crux of it. Is like, you know, it's like he should have made a point to say, "Remember, you're going to Switzerland now. You're going into a place that we respect." Because we need a place that can be a place of parlay. We need a place that everyone can say, this is sacred ground, and we're not going to cross it. You know, we need, you know, to give it a more ancient view, we need a Delphi. We need a place that everyone says, this is a place we don't attack. Now, the advantage for Delphi, the reason, and at the same line, the reason why Switzerland is Switzerland and Delphi was Delphi, was because all the countries around them at that time had great stockpiles of wealth there. Because it was the one place everyone agreed we're not going to attack, everyone said, well, that's a safe place to keep our national treasuries. But of course, Delphi eventually fell because eventually someone was, hey, you know what? Well, why don't we attack there? And there's all this money there. Let's go steal some. And, you know, this is the crux of everything, that basically cooler heads prevail until one idiot hothead decides to disrupt the order, and then chaos prevails. Yeah. So anyway.
What's also interesting to me is how comfortable Shades is in, like, challenging Diamondback, like, in front of the underlings and, you know, very aggressively. And you get that interesting moment. I wonder what that really says about their relationship, or who Shades really is. Because he says, you know, Diamondback turns to him and he says, Shades, don't forget who you're talking to. And he goes, don't forget who you're talking to, you know? Yeah. So are they on equal footing in some respect, or?
Well, I think what Shades' point is look, you hired me because of what I bring to the table. And this is always this is the conflict with Shades and Diamondback, I think. And I think we've seen this and we will see this more, which is this idea that, you know, Diamondback needs someone to be his consigliere. He needs someone to rule. And this is actually an interesting thing in, you know, Phil Parrish, who I do the Marvel Roundup and Super Connectivity with. He had recently had a conversation with Mark Waid, who's a very famous comic book writer who's currently writing a story in Avengers dealing with Kang. And his take on Kang was that Kang is Kang the Conqueror. He's a time-traveling imperialist. He goes from time period to time period, conquering people and whatnot. And he makes this point that, you know, Kang has these people because Kang loves to conquer, but he doesn't want to rule. Like Alexander the Great, he wants to conquer the world. But when it comes to like, oh, now I have to, come up with a tax policy, can't somebody else do it, as Homer Simpson would say? And of course, when it came to Alexander the Great, he had Ptolemy, and he had Ptolemy's the only one that anyone ever remembers. But he had a bunch of guys who basically wound up being the great families of the ancient world. The Ptolemies ruled Egypt, and they ruled Egypt for thousands and thousands of years. Hundreds of years, not thousands of years. Sorry. In fact, Cleopatra was a Ptolemy. Her name was Cleopatra Ptolemy.
Wow.
And they were, which is why you get into this whole convoluted argument of what color should you cast a Cleopatra? Because yes, she is from North African roots, and there were definitely darker skinned Africans in North Africa and Egypt at that time. However, her actual familial line is the Ptolemies, but the Ptolemies were actually married into the royal families of Egypt when the original Ptolemy conquered, and of course the Ptolemies had this real big thing about incest, so it gets crazy. But anyway, this is the thing. But the thing is that you have a guy like Diamondback who leads, who is a conqueror.
Right.
But he needs guys like Cornell, like Cottonmouth prior to this, and then Shades now, who will be his consigliaries, who will be his people on the ground, who can handle the ruling without being impassioned. I mean, and to make it into our modern thing, it is that idea of, Donald Trump isn't going to run the country. Donald Trump is not capable of running the country. He does not want to run the country. Running the country is something that is abhorrent to him. He wants to conquer. He wants to build. He wants to make America great again. But he wants someone else to actually do the fine detail work. He doesn't paint the gold leaf on Trump Tower himself. He hires a guy who goes and paints gold leaf on things.
He just approves it.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly. And that's how Diamondback is, and of course that is the dynamic between him and Shades. But of course, from Shades' perspective, it is eventually that doesn't work anymore. You being this loose cannon, it's great to get us here, but now you got to listen more to me because I'm the guy that's going to keep things running.
Hey, I'm voting Shades 2020.
Oh, aren't we all? Honestly, yeah. Honestly, if fictional characters could run for president and he was an option, yeah, I could definitely see that. Probably not, actually, because he is a sociopathic murderer. And at a certain point, don't we have enough sociopathic murderers in politics right now?
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I always got to turn everything to politics. I'm very political.
So, I think, and that leads us, interesting to, Misty finding her way to get away from, the rest of the hostages. She has, what's her name? Cassandra play a little fainting trick. Yeah. And she finds Luke Cage downstairs, who does the, punching through the wall thing. Yes.
And can we just say for one moment that Sweetness is not good at his job? Sweetness, he's like, what's his name? Sweetness or is his name Sugar? I keep on going back and forth on what his name is. Sugar. So Sugar is not good at his job. Although, I don't think Sugar thinks he's good at his job. I kind of see Sugar as like the Sergeant Schultz of this show. But he's there, and he doesn't make wave. And this is, when you talk about your power dynamics in a society, you have your Diamondbacks who lead. You have your Shades who administrate, and then you have your Sugars who just come in and punch a clock and go home.
Yeah, and then you have the guys like Tron who try to go make a name for themselves but always end up dead. Now, what's interesting here is Cottonmouth died. Tron is dead. A bunch of other people are dead, but the guy who flies under the radar, he got shot and he's still here.
Oh yeah, no, Sugar ain't going nowhere, man. Let me tell you, he is a man who has staked out his business model.
Right. He's the George Costanza of the underworld.
Exactly. But you know what? This is the truth of reality, is that the world is full of George Costanzas. There are far more George Costanzas than there are either Kramers or Seinfelds.
Right.
You know, because there are very few people who just fall backwards into things and have things work out. There are very few people who create something of value to move forward. Most of us are just guys who show up every day, do our job, and go home in delightful mediocrity. And Sugar is as mediocre as they come. He knows nothing. He sees nothing. He cashes his paycheck, and
he's gonna make it to season 2.
Oh, you know it. You know that man isn't going anywhere. That's what I will tell you. You know, we are gonna get folks here because we do have a season 2. Me and Mozz have job security. Season 2 is coming. But yeah, Sugar will definitely be there. And honestly, if they write him out of the show casually, I will be really sad, because I do think he adds something delightful to this show.
Absolutely.
Every show needs a Schultz, is what I'll say.
Right.
So
getting back to the story here, he busts through the wall and they find him. And what I'm really, really enjoying about this is the story and the budding relationship between Claire and Luke Cage, and how gently they're approaching it, and the little sweet moments that you get are really, really enjoyable. Like when he busts through the wall, you know, everything is going crazy around her, but she has this little smile on her face because she's so impressed by him, because she's digging him. You know, little things like that are really, really, really enjoyable.
Yeah, well, you know, it's a very interesting thing in the sexual dynamics of the show, because, you know, you do need them. Because let's face it, this is the golden age of television, but people still want to have boobs, and you know, all these things that people like, we still got to provide them in some way or another. And you know what's interesting is that Misty Knight in the books winds up with Danny Rand, at least temporarily. I mean, honestly, the Misty Knight Danny Rand relationship was kind of thought to be one of the great loves of comic books, although they've recently retconned. Well, they've kind of moved beyond that in some of the books, because I guess, well, in Captain America, where Sam Wilson is Captain America now, they've put Misty Knight in, and she's kind of, honestly, I think they just have like an open relationship. I think they're still together, but they're not bound by the idea that your sexual relationship has to be, hey, it's the aughts kids. Actually, it's the teens now. And
right. You don't own anyone's sexuality anymore.
No, exactly. So, but that's the whole thing. So we're gonna have to watch Iron Fist to see if they do have Misty Knight in there and how they develop that relationship. And if she gets a robot arm yet, we want that robot arm.
Well, it feels like it's coming.
Yeah, it does.
Claire sews up her artery shut and says, you know, it's dangerous for me to do this, and the longer it stays on, the higher the possibility is that you're going to lose your arm.
Yeah, you know? Well, you know, because this is freaking the Marvel Universe, and there's a Tony Stark in town. Right, and he's got, like, all kinds of crazy nonsense that he can, you know, bioelectrically insert into your body to give you an arm, you know? Yeah,
we just got a little glimpse into that with the new Spider-Man trailer. With Tony Stark leaving him a nice little suit.
Oh, yeah. Well, that honestly, for what it's worth, that is going to be a great movie.
I think so, too. I think it's going to be really good. They picked a really good kid to do it.
Well, you know what I'll tell you about that movie? Honestly, Michael Keaton as the Vulture.
Yes!
As the Vulture. Of all the B-list Spider-Man villains to throw in there, and you watch it, you're like, oh, the Vulture is scary. The Vulture is like the Vulture is now the Joker, and somehow, sort of how like the Joker was kind of a B-rate Batman villain until Jack Nicholson made him say, oh, actually no, the Joker's really scary. Just so you know. I think Keaton is making the Vulture like, oh, this is a scary villain. Okay, let's pay attention now.
I guess the what it affords you is the opportunity to play with the backstory or how it's presented, and because he's not as popular a character, people won't get as mad and will just accept the new version of him easily.
Well, exactly. That's the thing. If it's a good version, everyone loves it.
Yeah.
You know? I mean, that's the thing about any of these stories. I mean, this is what is always the thing with Marvel, with the Marvel Cinematic Universe. They play with things. Yeah. And they change things because they have to change things to make it interesting. Right. Because it's not interesting if they don't change what the story is. You know, which is why, not to give spoilers here, but which is why when you're watching this and you're watching, you know, Misty have these arm issues, you know, you're excited about one thing, but you want to be surprised by what the final outcome is.
Right.
Even though you know what the final outcome will likely be, you want them to change what your expectations are.
Absolutely.
And I think that's what is making the Marvel universe, the Marvel Cinematic Universe, at least critically popular. Well, I mean, it's actually very financially popular. You know, DC's Cinematic Universe is very financially popular. Marvel's is financially popular and critically popular.
Right. And I think the only reason it has the image of being that financially popular is simply because critically the movies did so poorly. And so that's the only thing they can focus on.
Well, exactly. You know, and well, yeah. I mean, that's because you need to get the critics on board, and that's and for Luke Cage, you absolutely have that. And of course, so to wrap this up, essentially, Hillard gives the cops Judas 2.0, which they did discuss. These are not the exploding Judas bullets.
Well, maybe they are, but just on a smaller scale.
Well, what it is they're taking a smaller amount of the Judas metal.
Right.
Which is that
Chitauri alien metal.
Chitauri, basically adamantium. But they can't use adamantium because somehow adamantium went to Fox.
Ugh.
Yeah, it's crazy. But, you know, so Fox has adamantium, so no one can say the word adamantium. That's why Captain America's shield is now vibranium. And now Chitauri metal. So Chitauri metal, they've got so they're basically Chitauri metal tipped. They're no longer explosive, but they will rip through. They will pierce his skin. Now, truth be told, his healing factor may prevent that from being a problem, but it's going to hurt like heck. But Luke Cage, at that moment, surrenders without a shot being fired.
Yeah.
Cottonmouth says, you know, are you going to save the damsel in distress? You're going to come after me? What are you going to do? Throws the woman off the balcony. He catches her. He becomes arrested. And then Zip, good old Zip, comes along and says, hey, you want to get out of here? I know a way. And to me, in some ways, the lower level crew members of the criminal organization are somehow just a little bit more interesting. Your Sugars, your Zips, your Trons.
Yeah.
In the way that they are positioning themselves. You know, and Tron is definitely positioning himself as, hey, I can be your new right-hand man.
Right.
Because everyone knows that Shades is the right-hand man. And everyone wants that position. The only person who doesn't want Shade's position is Sugar.
Right.
Sugar's the only... I don't want it. I'm not working towards it. I'm going to let this girl walk on down to get some things, even though it's going to cause problems. I don't care. I'm just doing my job.
Yeah, if you tell me to stand over there, I'm good at that.
Yeah, exactly. And honestly, I don't know, I can't remember exactly what happens to Tron, but I can tell you that, you know, Sugar's going to survive all this. I don't know exactly what happens to Tron, but Sugar survives. But of course, and then now, of course, Shades, in our final scene, gets hauled away in cuffs, gets his frog march, and, I think it's Claire. Claire steps on his glasses.
Yeah. Yeah, sends a nice message.
But of course, as we will recall, Cornell got frog marched out too, and we know how long that lasted.
This is true. This is true. Especially the Diamondbacks out and about.
Yeah, Diamondback gets out, gets into his SUV, drives on out.
Yeah, this cop's not really good at what they do at holding a perimeter, man. God damn it.
No, they're not. Well, these are super. As Gwenpool said in her. There's a comic book out that I read all the time called Gwenpool, which is about a person who's a comic book nerd from what she called the real universe coming into the Marvel universe. And her power is she has Deus Ex Machina, which is that she knows she's a character in a comic book who is apparently being written about, so she knows no harm will befall her. And she also has all of her encyclopedic knowledge of comic books. So she knows everybody's secrets. She knows what your secret identity is. She knows all these things.
Oh, wow. What an interesting concept.
It is a very interesting... I love the book, quite frankly. They just had a really good Christmas episode out, which was a lot of fun. You can hear about it on the Marvel Roundup, kids. But I'm trying to remember what my point was with this. I actually have completely forgotten what my point was. Aside from the fact that, the idea is that, man, I have no idea what my point was. Anyway, so moving right along. So, Claire steps on the, glasses, Tron and, Diamondback, scoot off. That's what it was the cops can't hold a perimeter.
Right.
What she had made the point of was that, the cops are kind of superfluous in a superhero universe.
Right.
Because if you live in a universe, if you live in a universe with superheroes, clearly the cops aren't doing their jobs.
Right.
But actually, more to her point was that not only are they not doing not only are they not good at their jobs, but they're probably not particularly honorable. No, not even that. They're not honorable. That there's not particularly a reason for them to do their jobs. And it comes into this idea of it being a fictional universe. Is that basically, they're not good at their jobs, but that's not necessarily a problem that every cop is not good at their job, because apparently there isn't nearly as much crime as everyone thinks. But, you need the superheroes to deal with the crimes because the cops are so incompetent. But the only crime that exists
the universe stands on is the incompetency of the cops.
Exactly. So, anyway, that was what that whole point was. But, no, they can't hold a perimeter. You are correct in that. Or at least there are enough people who are basically what you might call sugars, for whom holding a perimeter isn't what they're being paid for.
Right.
That's the crux of that Jan biscuit. Okay. Anything else to go over on this episode, Mozz?
No, I think we covered everything.
I think so too. Mozz, if people would like to talk to you about this episode, where can they find you?
They can email me at mozzmanzor@gmail.com. It's MOZZMANZOOR.
Wonderful. And of course, if you want to write to me about Luke Cage or any of the other podcasts I do, feel free to do so at my at superconnectivityblog@gmail.com. That's super connectivity blog, all one word, at gmail.com. And of course, follow me on the Twitters at Charlie Esser. That's CharlieEsser. Look for the 2 E's in the middle for quality. I live tweet various shows that are broadcast on a temporal platform, unlike Netflix, which I can watch whenever the heck I feel like, and so no real point in live tweeting. Okay. Good night, ladies and gentlemen. Sweet Christmas, jive turkeys. It's been another CageCast. Please, next week, step into the cage with us once again. Good night.